Should you be a garrison captain in Rise of Kingdoms? In this video, I'm going to help you figure out whether or not it's worth investing in legendary garrison commanders. And also, we're going to take a look at what makes a garrison captain successful. You've got to have a number of things lined up, not just commanders, but also equipment and tech, and even the right temperament for the job. So stick around in this video for everything you need to know about being a garrison captain in Rise of Kingdoms. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, I'm talking about my experience being a garrison captain and helping you all figure out if this is something that you potentially want to do. And what really motivated me for this video was my experience in this KVK, sitting in like 3 garrisons at a time, not really being able to do much in the field, and at one point being sort of frustrated that that's the situation I had created for myself. So keep in mind that if you are going to be a garrison captain, you're taking one or more of your marches off the field. So if you like field fighting and battling against other players using things like cheeseburger tactics with Harold Sigurdsson, actually, you can be a cheeseburger and also garrison something at the same time. For those that don't know, cheeseburgering is where you have one march that's got really high counterattack, a lot of instant proc damage, and you try to bully people off of a position that you're trying to defend. So I guess you can still cheeseburger, but your regular open fielding gets tougher the fewer marches you have. Also, I'm not going to lie, it's more than just a little bit harrowing to try to battle in the open field with a garrison captain and a garrison that's getting rallied. There's always the fear that you're going to pull your captain out of the garrison by accident. You really need to know how to field fight with a captain also in a garrison at the same time, okay? So those are just a few things that were really inspiring me to make this video. You also ask about this a lot in my streams. Hey, should I invest in this commander or that commander? I want to work on Zenobia. And should I? It's like, well, should you? So let's talk about this. If you are new to the game and you have T5, you could consider investing in garrison commanders. And the only thing you would need to be one of the better players for being a garrison captain is to have better equipment, okay? The captain determines the stats and, of course, the commanders that are defending the garrison, which means you need to have the best you could have, okay? The better your equipment is, the better you will do in KVK's Season 1 through 3. Of course, you also ideally would be max technology for your own research. If you're not already, then you're always going to kind of defer to someone who does have that max technology lined up. And the big challenge with KVK Seasons 2 and 3 is that there are going to be people who like migrate back with gear like I have, and they will always be the default over you to be the garrison captain if that's what they want to do. So keep that in mind if you're in the early game. And if you're in the late game in the Season of Conquest, there's a problem here too, which is that there's crystal technology. So if you're not spending to really push your crystal technology, then you're not going to be an ideal choice to be a garrison captain in that situation. And I would not recommend to those players that you play the role of garrison captain with really low tech. Or if you're going to do that, you always have to yield to someone else who actually has better technology. I will say this of being a garrison captain is that you can never really have enough of them in your kingdom, and in some ways, your weakest garrison in your entire kingdom determines what the enemy will attack. So you can try to minimize the number of places you can be attacked, but at the end of the day, if the enemy's smart, they're going to hit your weakest spot. And so you need a lot of garrisons. You need as many strong garrisons as you can muster. But for some people, it's just not viable, okay? If you're in the Season of Conquest and you don't have T5 yet, it's just not viable for you to be a garrison captain. Don't put your sculptures into these sorts of commanders. Now, leaning into the Season of Conquest just a little bit and the commander investments, in a perfect world, you really do want to have the meta garrison, whatever that is. So if you really have your heart set on being a garrison captain, then it is very important that you save up your sculptures so that you can go max whatever is really good at that time. And for players that are lower spend, a part of the challenge that you're going to have here is that you're not going to have potentially 3 really good sets of gear, one for each troop type. So you may even need to focus in on like, what is the one troop type where I really kind of want to go all in on a garrison situation. And I will say, for players that are really kind of rationing their sculptures, maybe being a garrison captain is not the right choice. If you have to ask the question, gosh, do I really have the sculptures to do this, that, or the other thing? You probably aren't spending like some of the stronger players in the game are that will be garrison captains. But there's a way around that. And the way around that is if you want to play in lower seed kingdoms. It's a very different experience. Okay, it's a very, very different experience being in a B or a C or a D kingdom. And I don't know if they even do a lot of that designation anymore, but the smaller the kingdom is, the more opportunity you'll have to garrison, because there aren't going to be as many players with stronger and stronger stuff competing, unless you get matched up in a big KVK like the one we're in right now, where weaker kingdoms are paired with stronger kingdoms, although I guess in the map I'm in, that didn't happen. In Season of Conquest, that frequently does happen, where a lower strength kingdom is paired with a higher strength kingdom, and then you also can't use your commanders. And I'm sharing these realities of being a garrison captain because I have a lot of people that show up in my streams and they say, I'm working on these garrison captains, you know? And working on a garrison captain is not yet a viable situation for you to step in. In other words, if you don't have the captains maxed, you should not be captain, right? Like we were sort of talking about this the other day. Someone said, well, I can back you up, but I have like a 5.511 Xeno. And I was like, that's not going to work in this instance, you know? And I appreciated that they were volunteering, but you really do need to have these commanders that you're using maxed out in order to really be very viable as a captain on behalf of your kingdom. So if all of that hasn't maybe steered you away from being a garrison captain, let me present to you the things that might make you lean in toward wanting to be a garrison captain. And if you're the kind of person who really likes to micro-optimize, to take every single point you can get and get as many stats as you can, and every single talent point optimized, that is a really great spot for a garrison captain. You spend a lot of time going into your talents and making sure you have exactly the right ones. The kind of person who is successful as a garrison captain will be spending a lot of time double checking and triple checking. Yep, my equipment is on and it's the right equipment at that particular moment. Yes, I have the right talent build for the thing that we're doing. And even right now, like my kingdom is sending some siege to die, and we made some changes to our talent builds, and they're very minor, but just to give you an example, right? Like one small change, since we're sending a lot of siege to die, is I've got expert siege design talents, things I wouldn't normally be using, but in this situation, it's slightly better. And there's an argument that could be made like, should I go down to Kingsguard if the garrison is actually that mixed up and not all archers, which is what you'd really want for this Amanitore Artemisia combination. And on the topic of micro optimizations, there's things like setting your commander tab, going and getting a rune, making sure that you have 10% tokens, which you can buy for gems in the VIP shop, and having high VIP level also makes a really big difference. All the way up at VIP, what is it, 17? I think you get 5% all damage. Yes. Well, being VIP 17 is better than not being VIP 17. And at some point, players that have all of these buffs stacked up in their favor make it just very oppressive for you to withstand what the enemy is doing. The other thing that is enjoyable about garrisoning is that if what you like to do when you're playing the game is put your commander in the garrison and watch it closely to see how its health is, to make sure they're not going to swarm the garrison, you like the coordination, either in voice or in game, telling people, hey, like, get out of the garrison, I'm going to get back in, and all that kind of stuff, then man, I would encourage you to be a garrison captain. For me personally, I find it a little bit exhausting to be doing all of that coordinating, and it takes a lot of mental energy. And so although there is something relaxing about just sort of putting your commander in the garrison, and you don't have to worry about being in the field and getting a in a bad position, and then your marches get swarmed, and there's a huge resource cost. It's just, in many ways, a lot easier to just put your march in, be the captain, wait for the result, refresh your captain when someone else is there to sort of back you up so the garrison is not captainless. Like, that whole process can be fairly calm, depending on how things are going. But maybe I'll splice in some footage where our flags were getting swarmed. And like, yeah, if you've got, 11 marches with 430,000 troops in them, swarming your flag, plus a rally with 2 million troops in it, yeah, no, it gets really, really intense really quickly, which is very fun if that's what you're into. Now, if you do like to fight in the field, though, and I personally do, then there are some garrison captains that actually work in the field in addition to being captains, which is so, so nice when that's the case. And if that's what you want to be doing, both field fighting and backup garrisoning every now and then you're going to want to look for the commanders that can do that for you really well. Artemisia and Amanitore is like the perfect example of that right now. Zenobia, I would never use in the field. Jadwiga, I would never use her in the field. Honestly, like, really unimpressive, I have found. But Amanitore Artemisia, that's actually one of my favorite combos in the game right now for open fielding, like top 3. Number 1, Guan Leo. Number 2 or 3 is Amanitore and Artemisia paired together. And as it turns out, they're a god tier garrison. So that's what I would be looking for in a garrison captain, is the ability to kind of do both things. Being in the open field or being in the garrison if you were lower on sculptures, and you just kind of have to hope that those sorts of commanders align with where you have your equipment, or in addition to saving sculptures, you also can just save up a lot of materials and a lot of patterns and hope that you're able to kind of move in on whatever new direction you're hunting. And if that's what you're doing, you will ultimately want 3 sets of gear, which is what I personally have done, is I would focus on kind of one set at a time. I started with infantry. I made my way over to doing a little bit of cav stuff. Then I made my way back over to doing archers, and then I finished off my cav stuff mostly. I just got to get these stinking gloves lined up. They're almost done on both of these. And then, these sets are very, very strong. Having your strongest players being garrison captains in your kingdom is very much a double-edged sword. It's definitely the right choice. You want to have just as many stats as you can, and it really, really does become oppressive with an overwhelming amount of equipment that kind of makes the difference, and making sure you have a rune and all these other things. It can be very difficult to deal with. But the other edge of that sword is that you are taking that player off of the field. So that's one less march that's potentially in the field. And if you are the kind of player who just feels really, really uncomfortable field fighting while also garrisoning, or you just don't have the resources to be open fielding like a madman, then what I would strongly recommend is you start to look at cheeseburger marches to sort of pair with your garrison commander. So for me personally, that's Pakal Herald or Alex Herald, and I used those marches with sort of backup equipment all throughout KVK to just really be pressuring players that are standing places that are on my territory. And we spent a lot of this last KVK on defense, and I assure you that the enemy kingdoms found it very, very frustrating when we would run out with these marches that, even if you swarm them for a little bit, are going to trade positive until ultimately you jump back into the safety of a city, and then you city hop back to your own city and refresh the march and just kind of do it all over again. There is not a great way to deal with that unless you just completely overpower the equipment and commanders and the player stays out too long in the field. But most people, man, it's just very difficult to deal with. So to summarize, if you don't have solid equipment and solid commanders, you have a couple options. You can go to a lower strength kingdom, hope for the best that you'll get paired up in a KVK where you're just battling other lower strength kingdoms, and then you can potentially take your commanders and really shine. There's a mid ground where you've got players that will be able to garrison either as a backup or potentially as a main with pretty decent gear. I know, and you know, even some pretty solid gear, but maybe you don't buy the crystal tech or whatever it is that doesn't put you at the top of the top for your kingdom. Those players all actually really need to step up if your kingdom needs a lot of garrisons. And in that situation, it might be nice to have invested in a commander like Pakal and Herald or Alexander the Great and Herald to kind of run around and pressure people that are nearby and you can fight them. And then at the very upper end of things, I mean, You can go all in on a bunch of garrison commanders, but you can see, like, I just have a bunch of my marches tied up in garrisons right now, and it really locks you down. I mean, there was a time yesterday where we kind of needed support somewhere else, and I really couldn't go without leaving the garrisons I was in completely stranded, and it would have been like 6 million troops across 2 different forts, and you just kind of hope for the best that people leave. The enemy's definitely going to see that. They're going to swarm it, they're going to rally it, or whatever, and then it's a ton of dead troops. So the downfall, and perhaps even the most frustrating thing, if you end up being one of the strongest garrison captains in your kingdom, is that you'll be completely ignored. And then they'll just go attack a weaker one. And if you move your captain, they'll just rally something else. And it's this weird game of musical garrisons, which can be very frustrating at times, to just be switching your garrison from here to there, and they just keep ignoring it. And it's like, man, what's the point of having invested in all this stuff if having all of it makes it so they just don't even make it relevant? They don't even hit it. If you have any other questions about being a garrison captain, definitely let me know down below in the comments. I generally have some sort of mixed feelings about it. You'll see your name at the top of a whole bunch of reports, which can be for better or for worse. If the reports look really bad, which can be completely out of your hands, that kind of sucks. But if things are really in your favor, then it's kind of cool that you have your name at the top of the report, and you can point to like, hey, check out what my kingdom did, and look, there's my name at the top. If you're into that, that's another double-edged sword. Leave your comments down below. Questions, concerns, thoughts about garrisoning. There's probably some more stuff that I could have covered, maybe should have covered. I'll point out that if you want to know what's the meta at this exact moment in time, I have a legendary tier list, and I'll have the card up in the top for that video. But the short answer is Jadwiga with YSS has great anti-swarm. Amanatori with Artemisia is perhaps a stronger garrison, but a little bit more vulnerable to getting swarmed. And Zeno with YSS is what I would say is sort of the 3rd tier garrison at this exact moment in time. But is good, is solid if you're just throwing kind of whatever you have in there, rather than really focusing in on one troop type. I think she might perform the best under those circumstances. So until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies, and let me know in the comments again, like, did this influence your decision to be a garrison captain?